Bricks and Minifigs is your one-stop shop for all things LEGO. Hit the link below to find a store near you. Hey everyone, Joshua Hanlon here, and today we're taking a look at this incredible LEGO Game of Thrones build. I've got the builder of this creation with me, so if you want to introduce yourself and then tell us what we've got here.
Hi, my name is Anuradha Pearson. People know me as Anu since many years. I've been a builder since, let's say, 2003, 2004. And this is my mark of the wall from Game of Thrones. It's taken me approximately 2 years to build, and I will walk you through the whole process of the mark. The wall is it's not to scale, it's just the background for all the other little marks around it, the whole diorama.
It's still an epic looking wall here, though. The size of this thing is crazy.
Well, I'll tell you the story of how that went. It was just supposed to be like 3 sections, and that's the brick I had. And I've been collecting these bricks since like 10 or 12 years because this amount of white brick is difficult to get in Lego, and then collecting this amount was just a crazy procedure.
So then around the wall, what do we have with this first area here?
So we start, this side is called south of the wall. This is where Westeros is, basically. And so they had to be a focal point. So my theory is just to display the wall this way, and then we have both sides, south of the wall and beyond the wall. These are the two explanations in the book. I started, and there's castles, there's many castles, and they're mostly dilapidated, just on the wall, south of the wall. So I thought of doing a couple of dilapidated castles, and of course Castle Black, which is the iconic castle of the brothers.
Take us through some of the piece usage and kind of details here, because I love what you've done architecturally to kind of give this that rundown look.
Yeah, so I mostly build just with my hands. A friend of mine, a Lego designer from the Lego house, said, thinking with your hands. He used that word. So yeah, I don't do a lot of digital work, but I have an idea of what I want to do, and then I build it, see how it looks, and rebuild or leave it be. So that was what I did. I love the color dark brown. We don't have too much dark brown Lego if you're listening. And so this whole, and I knew I wanted a water body here. So I started, this is the Bay of Ice. And so I started here, walled right up on it. And then the first castle is in the books and the show, is a dilapidated castle called Westwatch. Basically, it doesn't exist now. It's completely dilapidated. So this is what I came up with, like the rock work. And I've done a lot of rock work in my other marks. And so each time I try to do a little bit something different. So this was, I wanted slopes coming around here. So all the plates are like with hinges, they are at angles. And then I sloped it up. And for dilapidated, oh my God, AFOL have done such good work over the years. So I saw a few marks online and models online, and then came up with this. I've basically used the jumper plate throughout this, and jumper plates, because they have just one stud, you can put it at angles, and it gives a really nice look. The thing I liked about this was when I was doing all the landscaping for the snow, the carrot piece looked really cool as snow dropping down. And so I was really happy with these small little things.
That's such a fun thing to point out there. It's something you wouldn't necessarily expect to find, but you're right. It just creates almost like an icicle effect.
Yeah, it does. So once I did this, I went to the next tower, the Shadow Towers. They are in use as we read the books, but in a kind of dilapidated condition. There's just a few Black Brothers over there. So I built like towers. There's a few, I think there's 1 or 2 pictures online drawn by fans of Game of Thrones, but then I looked at those, and then basically this is my imagination. So partly dilapidated, partly working kind of, and got that going. And once I built what I wanted, I realized that the towers were way too tall for this wall that I had already built. And I was like, no, this is not going to work. And the whole scale of all this looks wrong. So I had to add a whole second section, fourth section, basically, to the wall that at least gave the effect of a really, really tall, big wall. And then I brought the towers down a bit. So I think now it kind of looks okay. In the towers, my favorite part here is the broken bridge between the two towers. And this was just a simple thing with the Lego plate that we have, which is a Lego cutout plate. It just came through like that, and it was like, oh, this is such a cool thing. Again, a very small thing, but I liked it. It gave a really nice effect.
With a build like this, it's those little details that I think really draw the viewer in when you're trying to make a sort of destroyed creation like this. It's all those kind of realistic feeling, broken details. So I think you captured that really nicely.
Thank you. Yeah, it was these little things because building the basic wall was kind of monotonous. I know I wanted to do it with slope and brick because that was what I had started collecting 12 years back. And another mark of mine has a large mountainside with the slope and brick. So that was what I had in mind. If I were to do it today again, I'd probably use plates or something different. But this was what I had. So this was what I was going with. But I still had several iterations, sides, just building it sidewise and everything. But then I went with this finally because this allowed me a lot of texture, and just building a white plain wall is boring. So this allowed me texture and stability because taking it to different shows around the country, if things break, it's really tedious to set it up. And setting up a mark of this size is anyway tedious. But if things are broken, that's no fun. So it had to be really, really stable. And this is kind of. I've tested it. I've thrown it down. It's okay.
Oh, wow. Speaking of stability, what we see the slopes on the outside. Can you talk more about kind of what the internal structure is like here?
There's all this. There's one section that supports this slope. So each side has its own support system. And then both sides are joined together. So it's in the end, it's just one big unit in there. And it's all sides are really strong and put together. So nothing slips and slides.
Very impressive. So we've checked out this section now. What's the next part of the story here as we look at the build?
Let's go around the shadow towers. And of course, the distance between these is incorrect because I don't have space. As you can see, my table ends there.
A little creative license is okay. I'll allow it.
Yeah. So after the shadow towers, Castle Black was the next thing I was going to do. And there are a few iconic things with Castle Black. First, I just played around with the outside, the external, because again, plain black brick, that's not going to work for me. It's too boring. So put a lot of texture using plates, tiles, and different bricks. And then the entrance of Castle Black is, I put a lot of time into that and try to make it as close as possible to the show or the books, and use different techniques. And I think it's come out all right.
What were some of the key elements you were really trying to kind of work in there to create that effect and the look you wanted?
So when you look at the pictures or the show, there's this bridge on top of the gate between two towers. And a lot of scenes have happened there, battles have happened there. And it has a really cool look with grills and pillars going up. And so I wanted to capture as close to that, a look as close to that as possible. So I've put some new pieces. I think that's a double grill piece. And it's kind of all inverted. So it's not building, etc. And again, it's all experimentation. Like, does this piece work or does that piece work? And finally, I think that one works. Things a build like that. Like the grill. It's inverted clips, and I forget what that piece is called, the minifig utensil in black.
Yeah, very impressive. No, it looks fantastic there. Yeah, it really creates a nice effect in that the brown kind of breaks up all the black nicely there as well. So it's like you said, you didn't just want the black wall.
Yeah, yeah. So and of course they had limited materials there, so they have the black and then they have a lot of wood. So the other thing I did was Castle Black was built over several years in the story. So I have different windows all through Castle Black, different kinds of windows or styles of windows to depict something like that. Like this was built in this time period and this was added later. I've actually even done that in the Shadow Towers, where each window, not each window is different, but a lot of windows are different. And then the next thing I did was just Castle Black is good, but then the interiors, that was pretty important. So in the show, in the books, and to me as well, this since I had the space inside. So I built the inner courtyard, and as they were living in it. And then I built the scene where the new recruits are being trained. So there's Pip, there's Sam Tarly, and there's Jon Snow. They're being trained by Sir Alliser Thorne. He's looking over the whole thing. There's other people from the Game of Thrones in the show depicted over there. So I thought, and there's arms, and since it's a living castle, there's horses and all sorts of things going on inside.
Did you have to use any custom elements to get the characters looking like you wanted, or are these all standard official Lego elements?
They are all standard official Lego elements in the castle. In another side of the mark, I'll show you something custom made.
Okay. Yeah, very impressive. And then you've got the path coming up here as well. And it's easy to overlook sometimes just kind of the landscaping, but this adds a lot to the build as well as kind of the different kind of forms you've done here on the ground. It's not just all flat studs or base plates.
Yeah, flat white base plate, that would look so boring and just not interesting at all. And so first thing what I added was different plates, plates of different sizes and shapes. After that, I said that was not enough. So then I added a whole bunch of slopes and tiles. And whatever pieces were there in white, it just kept adding and subtracting, seeing what looked good. And this just looks like, to me, it looks completely rugged and stony, covered in snow. And then there could have, I just suppose, there could be a few plants, which again, all covered by snow. And so I added all the little horn pieces, and there's some carrots somewhere, and I was really happy that we got carrots in white.
It feels very windswept and natural, like the snow has just kind of been blown wherever and caught on things.
Yes, and that was the effect I was kind of going for. Completely like rugged, windblown, desolate kind of place. Yeah.
Now, I know we're about to see a lot more trees, but I wanted to make sure we got your thoughts on this design over here. Can you tell us kind of your approach with this tree design on this side?
So beyond the wall, in the books and the show, there's a whole section of trees, like there's a whole covering of trees. And so I built those. And then to me, it's like that side looked like really tree heavy, and this had nothing on it. This was really desolate. But it just felt lopsided to me at that point. So I started just playing around with different tree designs. I knew I wanted it to look really desolate, keep that same look that I had created. And then I played around with this tree design. And we have dark brown leaves, thank God for that. And I just was playing around and came up with this really spiky kind of dry, but it's a tree. And so it broke this whole white landscape and added some more texture to it, I thought. And it just balanced it out. So many trees there, nothing here. So again, just my imagination.
Yeah, I like the technique you've done here. You kind of build up the base, it looks like, for each one, and then use those leaves kind of just stuck on each side of almost like Technic elements there?
So I used the Technic pins and the Technic connector over there, and just stuck leaves on the sides for the pinholes. Instead of pinholes, I stuck leaves over there, and it turned out okay. And it had a very interesting and different look for. And I like playing around with tree techniques. Everybody knows that who knows me. So, yeah. And in the end, I thought it was like this desolate kind of dry tree, but it was a tree.
Perfect. Well, we can keep making our way around. I know one of the really unique things you've got here is an actual motorized element. So I think you're able to show that off to us here. So if you want to, I know it requires, you got to get a little higher here. Tell us a little bit about kind of how this all works.
Yeah, I have to add motion sensors and stuff to it. But so none of my marks have a working model, something working in them. So I decided that I want this elevator to work. So here it goes. And here this way. And again, this had several iterations for it, since I didn't really know how to do power functions. So I played around with the whole thing. And a friend of mine, Brandon Jones, who's here, he consulted with me and he's good at this. And so, and then the difficult part was the track. It had to look like it's built in that time, and the whole thing had to work smoothly. So, played around with many different styles of track, and then this seemed to work. And then for the gear system, I just went with the simplest thing where they're just gears going the two different sizes, and then I got the speed, so I didn't have to add a speed controller or something to it. It just seemed to work. Of course, it took a lot of iterations and experiments, but in the end, this is the best I could do.
No, I think it moved perfectly there. It looked really fantastic, and I like your approach of kind of not over-engineering it. That's really important, especially for builds. Like you mentioned earlier, you might take this to a convention or something, display this other places. The simpler you can get things, the better when you're setting this up somewhere.
Yes, absolutely. And so, and since it was my first thing, I did not want to over-engineer anything. I have like a GBC complex thing. So it just, and if I just kept it going, maybe and added sensors, so maybe it goes down, touches, goes back up, and if it just works at a convention for some time like that, that would be cool.
Yeah. And once again, we can see some great use of these Technic elements to add that stability kind of there on the sides.
Yes. So the first thing I did was, the first design that I did was just have everything joint to the wall rather than coming out of the wall. And that didn't work because while the elevator moved, everything fell off. And so this was better. Then I broke the whole thing down and put these Technic beams in there. So that's stable. And then the railing is stable attached to it. And it's smooth running. It's not bad. It's been tested a few times and it's not too bad. It runs.
And what is the piece that pulls it up and down? Is that just one of the Lego kind of rope elements?
That is one non-Lego piece, because Lego didn't have something just one piece that big, and I had to tie knots, and that was causing problems. So this is just a fishing, what's it called?
Fishing wire, fishing line.
Fishing wire, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay, so that's a fantastic element there with some motorization. Where should we head to next? Should we go back around here?
Yeah, we can go back around there and do beyond the wall, the side beyond the wall. And so here, since there weren't any castles or anything, I basically just built scenes from the book or the show. So I have several. So one of the things that is iconic there's the wall, and then there's a clearing between the wall and the trees, and that was specifically done by the brothers, the Castle Black brothers, because they could then see the wildlings or the free folk attacking them. So the scenes I've done here, so the trees are slightly away from this as space allows, and then the scenes are basically after the day of the big battle between the wildlings, the Mance's army, and the Brothers Black. And so this is the morning, next morning, or a few days later. I'm not exactly sure when all this happened. So we start with Stannis's army coming to help the brothers. He knows that the free folk want to cross the wall, and there's more danger coming. That's what it's in the stories. And so I have Stannis's army approaching to help. That's one of the scenes. And yes, all the people who know Game of Thrones really well, I know that this is the wrong side that Stannis's army is coming from. Please do not attack me on that. It's just a scene. And whatever space I had, I could work with.
What I love here is your use of the opposable horses here. I feel like that's an element that really adds some nice sense of action that people don't use always to its full advantage. So I like how you set these up here.
Yeah, luckily we have these from Lego. And so it's like, yes, the army's going towards the horses are in motion, and everybody's weapons are drawn over here because they're ready to attack anytime.
Perfect. And then what do we have on the other side that they're kind of heading towards there?
So they are heading towards, they think the fight is still going on, but the fight has stopped, and Mance's army has camped in the trees a little away from the wall. And at the same time, Jon Snow is having a conversation with his fellow brothers, and he wants to come out and have a discussion with Mance to stop this whole war. So I have those scenes going on where Mance's army is camped, and from the other side, Jon Snow is coming out to meet them. Mm-hmm. And the whole battle has already happened, so we have a whole bunch of dead people. Excuse me. Over there. And what we saw and read in the books is there's this whole thing, the axe kind of thing, coming from the top of the wall that they just swing across, and people who are trying to climb the wall, they get cut by it and are killed. So you have dilapidated bodies over there.
That gives us quite possibly my favorite element of this whole layout, which is these minifig legs, torsos, one-armed torsos. Some of them have armor, some have a head, some don't have a head. This is just an arm right here. I love that.
Yeah, and that was how they were cut. And so I just left. It's a little gory, and kids shouldn't see that or notice that. But yeah, it was part of the story, keeping true to the story as much as possible. And of course, there's the dead bodies down there, and and they had things like bears. The free folk had things like bears and a huge mammoth. So I have that, and I do have a mammoth as well, but I haven't put it in the scene now because the mammoth was dead the next day or the next morning. And there's no place over there to put a dead mammoth, so I do have the mammoths, but I haven't found a good way to put them in.
And I know we mentioned the trees earlier, and you can really see that tree design start to shine here, especially the way you've kind of layered the leaves. So what was your approach here on this side?
So again, trees are a very, very intriguing build. And I did go through few different designs. And airfoils, again, there's just amazing designs online. And so I saw a few, and there's a builder from Germany. He calls himself Ragal. I think his name is Raf. And I saw some of his trees, and those were really cool. So, but I didn't want to copy him exactly as it were. So I made a few tweaks and changes. I added a few of these round pieces. They're really cool to make trees. The brown tube kind of piece there.
Kind of a curved trunk piece type of piece almost.
Yeah. And then there's a tube running through. There's just one of the hose pieces running through things, and they're split in the bottom. And so I got this kind of design, slightly different. There's also Technic pieces in here. and pins holding things up. And the trees, again, they are more or less, when you travel with trees, all the leaves fall down, and I didn't want to rebuild so many trees, so they're more or less stable in the hose. You can, some of the places you can see that there's a hose and it's all stuck there, so mostly it will not break during travel.
That's so fantastic, 'cause I can't count how many times I've been talking to a builder at a show and they're like, yeah, I brought all of my trees and they were just completely shattered by the time we got here.
Yeah, I mean, when you want to build trees, it has to look tree-like and delicate. But then if you make it really strong, it doesn't look tree-like. So one has to find a balance. And I pick these trees up and I throw them around, and they're not bad. I mean, one or two leaves will naturally fall down. Then the thing was to add color, because again, just plain white in the whole landscape wouldn't be fun. So I wanted two different colors. So luckily we have the olive green and the dark green. And of course the trees are that, but it's all snowy, and so everything is covered with snow. So then I layered. I layered with the white leaves. Again, thank God we have white leaves. And so this turned out to be something that I think was fun, because you have the olive, you have the dark green, and then everything is covered with white. And then there's different sizes. There's the 6x5, this is the 3x4, and we have white in both. So I could get a whole effect of a long row of trees, and there was plenty of color to break the monotony.
No, I think that technique works really well. Another thing that caught my eye here is the minifigs, especially down in this portion. So what have you done with kind of the weapons there and just kind of the accessories to create that look?
I have, so basic minifigs, and we have quite a bit of armor. It's mostly 99% all Lego, and there's some people still ready for battle, some people relaxing in the camps. The only thing with these are free folk, and I couldn't, for the Brothers Black, it was easy to get black capes. And my friend from Cape Madness, he helped me with all the capes. And he took time to actually make these capes for me for the free folk. Black was straightforward, but this he made hoods. He tried to make a whole suit, which wasn't working. And then he made these capes that look like the furry stuff they wear. And then he made hoods. And so it was really cool. I'm really thankful to him that he did this. And I got them looking more or less like in the show. Just they have a suit, I have capes and a hood.
So I know with a build of this size here, as we've kind of looked at the details now, kind of pulling back to the fact that this is such a massive build, a lot of people always have the question of kind of how do you transport this to a show? So do you have specific boxes or crates of some kind that you know will fit all this, or do you just kind of put it in whatever you have on hand? How does that shipping process, how do you anticipate that kind of working as you take this to a show?
It is built it is modular. So first thing, so if you look closely, which I do not want you to look, but for this question it works. It breaks at these points. It's all just joint with these over here. The other thing is internally these are connected. Like if a kid comes and rocks the table, this will not fall mostly because each of these sections is connected to the other with Technic pins. So it breaks in these 4 sections, and it breaks again in these 4 sections. So you can see that. And then these landscapes are separate plates. And I don't have, just the regular boxes that you get in Home Depot or Lowe's. So some of the boxes are 15 by 15. So I've built, this is like 13 and something. So this will fit in those boxes that I measured. And so all these are kind of that size. And this is, of course, a 15-inch base plate. So this will fit in those boxes with a little bubble wrap or covering or something.
Yeah, that's a really good point to kind of keep that type of thing in mind when moving to shows is, will this fit the boxes you have on hand? How are you going to get this out the door? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So with a little, I've got a few years of practice on hand taking big mocks to shows. So yes, I built according to box sizes that I know exist already. I have not packed this after building ever. So this will be, once all this is done, first time I'm going to pack and see how it works. But yeah, it's built to box sizes.
And for people watching the video who maybe want to see this in person someday, do you have shows in mind or various places where you're hoping to take this in the future?
Yes, I hope I can take it to BrickCan next year. That's the next con coming up. And maybe BrickCon, did I say? So BrickCan, which is in Vancouver, BC, a really cool show if you haven't been to. And then BrickCon, maybe next. It's a Seattle-based con, so next October maybe, or September. Yeah, they changed it to September now.
Hard to keep track of all the shows, but that's very cool. So I'm glad you have plans to bring this out in person. There are some other details, though, that I wanted to make sure we showed. So we'll have to stop for a second and let John get a higher vantage point so we can show more of the wall here.
Yes, and the last thing on this side is the God's Wood tree. That's where the people from the old religion, they take their vows. And so I built this tree. I know it's horrible. Please don't tell me it's horrible. I already know that. But I was so burnt out, and it was one of the last things I did. So someday I will redo it.
There you go. There's always something else to change up or improve. I'm sure you're always looking at it like, oh, I could change this up here.
Yeah, always in a big mock. Like, I would not say any of my mocks are finished because I can take out any mock and kind of continue building. So, yeah, that's what it is.
Sounds good. Well, we'll take a look at the top of the wall now.
The top of the wall, again, in the shows and the books, is finished, and they go up there, and they actually keep a check on north, south, everywhere from the wall. And when the war was going on, they actually had these barrels full of oil, and they set it on fire and rolled it down. That was one of their strategies. So, and I think they say, like, in the books, about 7 horses. It's so big at the top, like 7 horses can ride through it. Of course, I didn't have that space, but and they all keep watch from there, so there's quite a few. They use the elevator to gather up there, and there's quite a few brothers keeping watch from there. So I built it, I finished it, because that's a big part. And then I have one of the really cool parts from the show where there's Tyrion Lannister. He's there, and he says something. You go to the books or see the show, but he says something. I shouldn't say that on camera, and I want to do that from the end of the world. So he's doing his thing from there.
There we go. Fantastic. I love that extra level of detail by putting that up top, even though it is so far up there, it still kind of completes the whole scene. And speaking of that, do you know how tall the whole build is here?
I'm thinking close to 4 feet. I had calculated it the other day. So it's like each of these is about 13.5, so by 4, and that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, this whole layout is just so incredible. So I appreciate you taking the time to really take us through a kind of a detailed journey of all of this here. And like you said earlier, it'll be on display in some places next year as well, which is super exciting. So can't wait for you to get this out and let more people see all your great work here. Thank you so much for taking us through everything.
Thank you. I appreciate being on your show, and thank you for taking the time to do this interview.